And so as a city that is so diverse in the communities that we serve and the workforce that we have, it's really important that we're understanding the needs and experiences of our workforce, of our communities, so that we're able to work in their best interest. My name is Brenna Schmidt. I'm the Employee Engagement Specialist in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I've been working for the city for 8 years. I started in ODEI as an executive assistant to the city's first chief DEI officer. I was promoted then to DEI coordinator, and then after some years, especially my time administering the city resource groups, we changed my title to be more in alignment with what my role focused on, which is employee engagement. I wear a lot of different hats in our office. We're a really small team. I'd say it's a lot of facilitating conversations and relationship building with folks. Part of my job is kind of like putting on a different hat for different projects and stuff like that, being a collaborator, being somebody who's able to kind of like sit back, listen, contribute. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about facilitating those conversations, facilitating connections. I think DEI is something that's been seen as like really polarizing as of late, and that there are different definitions that have kind of been floated around, means different things to different people, and some people see it as a negative thing. But really at the end of the day, it's quite simple, where diversity is just bringing people from all backgrounds to the table. Equity is ensuring that everybody has the access to the opportunities and the resources that they need to thrive. And inclusion is creating environments where every voice is heard and empowered to make an impact. So I think it's really simple. DEI supports everybody. It's a good thing. Okay, I'd say an example is like our fire stations. We had a conversation with our fire department when we were doing one of our quarterly check-ins with them, and they were talking about how they want to install EV chargers for different vehicles at each of the fire stations. But they wanted to make sure that they were doing it with DEI in mind, making sure that they're considering what neighborhoods they're in, what resources the neighborhood has, and how the impact of having an EV charger at one of those stations might impact the neighborhood overall. And so I think that's like one of those things where it's like DEI is not necessarily like just giving opportunity to different people for different things. It's really about just making sure that the neighborhoods that we're supporting as the city overall, as city government, are being supported in a myriad of different ways. It can be really difficult when you're the only person who has your identity at a workplace, but really just in general, if you're the only person who looks like you, who has any of like your lived experiences, it can be really isolating and really difficult. There are some visible and invisible things that folks can feel. It can also unintentionally put people in a position where they feel as though they need to speak for an entire community. It can put a lot of pressure on a person, and we just want to make sure that there's a sense of belonging where folks feel as though they're able to show up authentically as themselves, because we know that when folks feel as though they don't belong, they can really retract from themselves. They can lose confidence. When you lose confidence, you feel like you don't want to engage as much in the work that you're doing. Not being engaged in your work, you can feel as though you don't really belong at the place where you're working at. It can impact the retention at the workplace. And so making sure that folks feel included and that we're building an inclusive environment is really important to make sure that folks feel as though it's a workplace that really supports them wholeheartedly. I think that the city has made a lot of meaningful strides in embedding diversity, equity, and inclusion instead of just having it be a set of principles. I think that we've seen it really embedded in different policies, frameworks, in the overall culture here at the city. I think that the city resource groups, or CRGs as we call them here, are one way that that shows up, where we're providing opportunities for folks who have historically been marginalized in city government with an opportunity to network with folks who look like them, who share in those same lived experiences, but then also giving them access to professional development opportunities and leadership opportunities so that they're able to kind of do things that might not necessarily fall under what their specific work scope is. There's more work to do in terms of promoting DEI across the city, but I will say that I feel like we've really spent a lot of time and effort into creating an adaptable environment where investments and supports have been put in place. At the forefront of it, it starts with humility and intentional leadership. I think that this can be fostered through asking questions, actively listening, and providing a supportive environment for your team. There's an element to it where you need to show up really humble and recognize that you don't know everything. And that's okay that you don't know everything. It's just about what you're doing with the information that you're learning and how you're gaining that information. It's important to set clear expectations and boundaries with your team when conflict arises, because conflict will arise. That's something that just happens. It's human nature. It's important to address it head on and to not overlook it, shove it under the rug, or let it fester, and to have an open dialogue about it. We want to make sure that those conversations have some clear boundaries in place where everybody feels as though they're respected and that their viewpoints are heard. But you're never going to be able to avoid that conflict. So you want to be able to work through it in a productive way and be open to receiving feedback, because it's corny and people say it, but feedback really is a gift. The city resource groups, as I mentioned, are one of those spaces where if folks feel as though they're not supported in their work environment, they're able to come, they're able to interact with folks who share in their identity, shared in their lived experiences. Also for folks who are allies to those communities, to make sure that you're showing up for your colleagues in a way that is as supportive as possible. CRGs are really empowered by employees. They're not dictated by the Office of DEI. They're not dictated by the mayor's office, and that's really intentional. We want folks to feel as though this is a group that is supportive of their needs, that's acting in their best interest, and that really is responsive to the things that are most important to them. So I think the CRGs are the #1 spot for that. Overall, ODEI acts as a support to individuals in departments. We will never ever claim to know everything, but we can commit to supporting our workforce and advocating for our workforce to the very best of our ability. What I really love about the resource groups is the way that they operate entirely differently across our groups. So we have our Women of Color group, who has really built up a structured leadership team where there's different committees. There are 2 co-chairs and an executive secretary, and they are really structured in that sense. But then on the flip side, we have our Young Employee Resource Group, or YERG, where everybody kind of comes to the table as an equal contributor. And I think that that's a really powerful way to see how folks operate and work really differently. And so we're just working with the talents and the strengths that everybody is bringing to the team in the way that works best for the team. It's really important because it directly impacts employee well-being, and we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the well-being of our employees, because we spend the majority of our time during the week in the workplace. What I want to emphasize is that people are important. And when people feel included, they're more engaged and able to innovate more, and then they're able to contribute to the workplace in a way that feels different, that's pouring into them as much as they are pouring into the workplace. And I think in a lot of instances, we can be really quick to try and respond to something because that's just how our brains work. You know, we have different things that come up in our mind as somebody is talking, and we often want to just jump in and say that right away, but it's really important to kind of be able to take a step back, listening to understand as opposed to listening to respond, and listen actively and thoughtfully. And so I think at the beginning of my career, there were times where I would want to display all of these different things that I came out of college knowing. I wanted to, show that I'm like this smart, thoughtful person who has good ideas and stuff like that. But then I think unintentionally, I was not showing up in the best way that I could for communities who don't look like me. To be able to kind of just sit back and hear what others are focused on, what others might be struggling with, the questions that other people might have, gives me an opportunity to kind of step in as an ally in the best way that I'm able to, and then advocate when they're not in the room, advocate for the needs that I've heard in conversations prior. You can check out our website on philip.gov, which has a really good overview of the work that we've done, just to connect with the folks who are in our office. We're currently building out our team. We have a new Chief DEI Officer, a new Director of LGBT Affairs, and a new Deputy Chief DEI Officer. Each one of us on the team kind of brings a different perspective to the work, and I think that for folks to be able to just come in and get an understanding of who we are and how we're able to support them really is the best way to engage with us. So yeah.